I'm sorry.
Yes, test. Yep, they're working now. Okay, sorry for that. We weren't spoofing you. We just had no mics for a minute. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. This meeting takes place in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. Before we go on, I'd just like to add the deputy mayor is on her way and she'll be here shortly. Are there any additions, deletions to the agenda? There's one to the closed session, a personnel matter that we'll just add at this time. Everyone's okay with that? And if everyone's okay with that, a motion to approve the agenda with the addition would be great. Moved by Councillor Greek, seconded by Councillor Babineau. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. Before we move on in the agenda, I'd just like to mention that former Deputy Mayor Peter Moser's dad passed away last week. So I'd like to pass along my condolences and the condolences of the council and to the citizens of town of Lunenburg. Peter's dad I knew very well. He lived in Riverport with my grandparents. So again, Peter, our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family at this time. So moving on to the April 15th council meeting agenda. The council approved the agenda for April 15th, 2025 as presented. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Strong, seconder. Councillor Daphne, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carried. Approval of the minutes from the March 25th, 2025 meeting. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Babineau, seconded. Councillor Daphne, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. We do have one presentation, but one omission I forgot at the beginning. We also have regrets from Councillor Full tonight. She was unable to be here. This is not a regularly scheduled meeting date, so plans were made and couldn't be, changed. So again, I'd like to pass on Councillor Fulton's regrets as well. So we now have the quarterly police report by the RCMP.
Hello, Your Worship, councillors, staff, and residents of Lunenburg. So I have the quarterly report for the fourth quarter of 2024, and I would like to go over some of the highlights of the report. So on page 3 for calls for service in the district of Lunenburg itself, we had a 6% increase in calls for service. But in the town of Lunenburg, over the same period, we had a reduction of 25%. The stats are there, the notable stats. I won't go down through them. On the next page, for abandoned and misuse of 911, I'd just like to bring this to your attention. We had a number of calls to a seniors home in the town here. And I was monitoring the situation, and it was continuing. I went and met with management and advised them that this was inappropriate use of a phone being allowed by the residents. They were in secure areas and had access to a telephone and calling 911 on a regular basis, tying up our members for things that weren't appropriate. So we came to a mutual resolution, and that has stopped. So I'm glad to bring that to your attention. We've had a number of theft under calls. These are shoplifting calls to the grocery stores. And I think that, we obviously have some individuals who are in town with some issues. And that comes out in shoplifting at our local grocery stores. Our suicidal calls continue. They're approximately the same numbers. These tie up a lot of resources for the RCMP. It's not only the time that we go on the call, it's when after the call is completed and we spend hours upon hours keeping people at the hospital until such time that they are seen by a practitioner. So on a normal mental health call, we could be at the hospital for anywhere to 4 to 6 hours. So that's tying up our members. It's been an issue that's been around as long as I have. and I don't see an end to it anytime soon. We had a theft at one of the local grocery stores, talking back about the shoplifting. Two individuals who are well known to myself, and the members had a quick response to that and were able to locate those two individuals shortly after leaving the grocery store and arrested them. They're being processed through the courts. A lot of the other calls, we'll just go through. I highlighted the homicide, suicide, the intimate partner violence that occurred in Mahone Bay. The IPV files, that's what we refer to them as, are before all of the public. Everyone's interested in them. We've had certainly an increase in the fatal homicides. So in this district, I just want to give everybody some assurances that we have processes in place from the time that an IPV file comes in. It has to go through 2 layers of supervisors within the first 24 hours. So the supervisor who is on the shift reviews the file before the end of the shift. All the actions that are appropriate are taken. And within 24 hours, a second supervisor, that would be myself, I am the reviewer for the district, and the file is reviewed again to ensure that we are in compliance. The homicide in Mahone Bay, I highlighted that because we are moving through that process, and a lot of pretrial matters have been accepted and resolved. So I hope to get through that trial fairly quickly. Last week, to let everyone know, we had a stolen vehicle. If you'd like to come in. We had a stolen vehicle last week. It was reported to us, and within an hour and a half, I was involved in it. Because of the technology today with stolen vehicles or vehicles themselves, we were able to track where that vehicle was in proximity to, and we located it in a pit off of Tanner Settlement Road. The vehicle was not damaged that I'm aware of. We secured it. We had our forensic team come. We took it to Chester Detachment, secured it inside, and we had our forensic team come and go over that car. For all the councillors and the public, there's a pending tour of the RCMP headquarters by the interested parties from Lunenburg Council. That tour is going to take place on May 21st, and the details of that tour will be presented to you guys in the next couple days. I'm happy to let you know that we had quite an interest from Lunenburg, Mahone Bay, Chester, and MODL. Unfortunately, the Gold River Council is going to election, and they're all at large for the month of May and are unable to participate. Body worn cameras for the RCMP. The public's been very interested in the rollout of the body worn cameras. I myself took the training approximately 6 to 7 weeks ago. And to let you know, in Nova Scotia alone, on the day that I took my training, there would be more members in Nova Scotia with body worn cameras than anywhere else in the country. So I think that this division is moving very quickly to the body worn camera. And you can see it yourself. Here it is here. To let you know, it takes a view of 180 degrees. When our members step out of the car, when their feet hit the asphalt, they are to turn the camera on. When they introduce themselves, it's a practice to advise everyone you are being audio and video recorded. They're being well accepted by the membership. The membership is using it as a disclosure package, and it's going very well. So we've had some increased traffic enforcement. During the last meeting, I let everyone know that we have a number of new members, younger members, who have joined our team at Lilydale Detachment and who are interested in increasing the enforcement and visibility within Lunenburg town. So I hope everyone has started to notice that. To let everyone know, for the summer, I have a few things, myself and management, that we would like to move forward with. And we hope to have bicycle patrols in Lunenburg Town, Mahone Bay, as well as reg surge duties that you will see members on a regular basis in town in red surge and on foot. For our school liaison officers and myself, we've been making frequent visits to the Blue Nose Academy. Coming from a criminal background, everyone, for me to go to a school and to interact with children, it's really something. I was really taken back the first time I did, probably 3 weeks ago, and I went back a second time because it was so positive. So it's quite a change for me. And that's everything that I have on the report. If there's no questions, I would like to submit the report for approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Babineau?
Thank you. Through the chair, I was wondering, I was happy to see the reduction in service calls within the town of Lunenburg. But just wondering if you can speak to if there's any history of that sort of happening over the winter? Like, is that a
Yes, it
seasonal
would be
thing?
typical.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah,
So when I saw a 25% reduction, I wasn't surprised at that because of the winter.
okay, yeah.
Sometimes it can be skewed a little because of accents and the weather. So
Thank you.
Councillor Strong?
Just two comments. I'm actually really happy to see the IPV moving through so quickly after the commission report came out. I think that's actually faster than I've seen anything that's been a commission has reported on that has gone through the system so quickly. So I'm happy about that. And I'm also really happy to hear about the use of the BWCs. I think I'll be interested in watching the court cases coming out of them because for many years we were concerned at the bar of how they would be used and their impact. So yeah, great thing.
Thank you. Anybody else? I'd just like to add that again, thank you very much. The presence that we've seen here in town has definitely increased dramatically over the last number of months. So I think that's great. And I just like to say, going through this, I was a little, I guess I live in a bubble sometimes. I was a little, I guess, taken back with a lot of the domestic calls that you've had, the amount of them. They weren't in town per se, but they were definitely in our district. And I guess what's sad is you folks, the police officers, the RCMP officers, seem to be doing what you can do. You get there, you deal with the person or but it seems the system at times seems to be failing, because how many more times do we have to send a violent offender back the same night or the next morning with conditions, quote unquote, until more and more of what happened, recently happens. And it's a sad thing, and you guys can't do any more than what you do, but there is a flaw, I think, in the system there somewhere, quite frankly. So thank you, though, for everything you and your officers do.
thank you very much. I know that there's going to be a report presented on the reduction of speed in town, and I will stay around to answer any questions that come out of that report.
Thank you very much. So moving on, we have public input and questions, and we actually have nobody tonight unless one of you three would like to. Nothing? Okay, all good. So we'll move on then. Correspondence, there really isn't any. Public hearings, there isn't. We'll move right on to 11.1, which is an information report that is in front of us that we can deal with in some which way, shape, or form, because the budget process is coming up. So it's on the Lunenburg Academy washrooms. I'll open it to the floor to start, and then we can go from there. So anyone want to start?
Do you want Tyson?
Oh, Tyson, yeah, Tyson, if you want to go ahead, you can and give a report.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. So this evening I have a report on the potential Lunenburg Academy washrooms. This is a follow-up from the March 4th Committee of the Whole meeting, where an issue was identified by the Academy Foundation and the library. staff were directed to explore the feasibility and cost estimates for a washroom solution at the Lunenburg Academy. So as I said, between the Academy Foundation and Library, they express that the Lunenburg Academy is experiencing significant increase in visitors, including tour buses during the tourist season. At the moment, there are 2 single-unit washrooms on the first floor that are situated within the library footprint. So they're for use of the existing tenants we have, as well as any visitors to the building. If council chooses to proceed with any sort of permanent washroom installation, further consultation shall be required with the Heritage Officer to ensure compliance with the Heritage Conservation District and applicable bylaws. So I just wanted to get that out there on the front end for everyone's consideration. So the staff looked at 3 potential solutions to the issue that was identified. The first one and the simplest one is portable toilets. So this option included 1 accessible portable toilet and 3 standard portable toilets, all of which are complete with a water and sink to wash hands. So understanding the aesthetic aspects to portable toilets, staff also considered building a fence that would obscure the blue room look and make it a little more presentable. And up on the screen, we have an example that's at the Grand Prix National Historic Site in the Valley. So that kind of petitioning where it's not directly visible, gives people the privacy, wouldn't impact so much on the aesthetic of the academy that we're all very proud of. So we looked at the partition fencing, creating a level gravel pad for the portable toilets to sit on as well. That would be completed by Public Works. That was the way we looked at it, with a cost of somewhere in the region of $10,000 upfront. In terms of the rental, maintenance and cleaning of the portable washrooms, we'd be looking at around $1,000 a month for the 4 units. And we feel like we've got a good handle on that from the other portable washrooms we have around town. So for the season that was identified, that tourist season, we'd be looking for $5,000 in terms of the upkeep and maintenance of that facility. So the next option that was considered was what's called a vault washroom. So we reached out to other municipalities, and in this case, Modal, and asked them what other temporary washroom facilities they had, and they use these vault washrooms. I think at the beach at Mush up on the lake there. So these washrooms are a good solution where things like water, sewer, and electrical connections aren't very accessible. So basically, my understanding is that it's a holding tank that gets buried, and then a building structure's put on top of it. So it's that kind of setup, but it does need regular cleaning and maintenance because the tank fills up and it needs to be disposed of. So again, borrowing from the neighboring municipality, they'd recently looked at an accessible vault out at Mush, and for the design and construction of that, they carried a budget of $190,000. So that's for a single washroom. So again, looking at as per 4, we're in the region of $750,000 for that. And again, looking at similar similar maintenance costs as with the portable washrooms again. And there's also the question about the compliance with the land use bylaw that's servicing where the zoning of the academy, the existing services that are on Callback Street would sort of bring that into question, whether that was in compliance. So again, just identifying a potential issue there. The third option that we looked at was a new permanent public washroom. So this is recall from March 4, council said this wasn't really what they were looking at, but for the means of comparison, we thought it was useful. So design and construction of a new public washroom facility with water, sewer, electrical connections. We're thinking it's in the range of $600,000 up front. And then just based on the maintenance costs of the public washroom that probably everyone saw is opening this weekend, we're in the $20,000 annual budget for that. So at the bottom of the second page, there's a summary of those options for your consideration, and that concludes the for information report, and await council's direction if staff need to take this any further. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyson. Anybody have any questions? Councillor Strong.
I don't have any questions, but I'm wondering whether we should put this off into the future, given that the Sustainable Heritage Cultural Group is actually trying to address the amount of washrooms in the town and strategically placing them and somehow getting funding to pay for them. So that's due out, as far as I know, that first report, and hopefully something will be captured in there that we can draw from and make a decision on this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Deputy Mayor.
Yes, through the chair. I'm just really curious to understand the large difference between the annual maintenance for the vault washrooms and the public facility, standalone facility. So how does the vault washroom get cleaned? Like, is that part, or I guess I'm just not, I know the portable ones are, it's part of the contract to have them flushed and cleaned, regularly. It is with the vault, do you not still need someone to come in and clean up after them? And just curious where that 5 versus 20 came from.
So through the chair, the upkeep in the washroom building down below is a daily job for the person that performs it. They clean the facilities. They go over everything in that building and make sure it's good. With the vault washroom, I think we were considering it more, the maintenance would be more similar to a portable toilet. It wouldn't necessarily be cleaned daily. Obviously, if we needed to, if that needed to be done more regularly, then that would increase that cost. So staff did make some assumptions based on how we saw it being performed, but if it needed to be performed more regularly, that would be an option, but costs would also come up.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Follow-up question, but something that's not presented here, but curious about as well. And that is the fact that there are other washrooms at the academy, in the academy building right now. They're in the basement. So they're not accessible, of course, because the elevator doesn't go to the basement, but they are working currently available washrooms, which are not now used. And I understand there's some logistical issues with that as to access to the basement by tenants, but I'm just wondering if that's something that could be investigated, whether or not there could be, a corridor created, or some access from one of the exterior doors, particularly the one on the south side, perhaps, that could direct people down to the washrooms that are currently existing in the building.
Through the chair, that's something we could look at. My understanding from March 4th was we were looking for the washrooms to be accessible to people using the academy grounds at all times. So someone's using the playground or that basketball court area, or the I'm going to use the wrong term here, but using the gardening area, that those washrooms would be accessible. That may not necessarily be achieved if they're inside a secure building. But if that's something the council would like us to investigate further, we can definitely do so.
Personally, I'd love to see us investigate that option, because I mean, there are functioning bathrooms down there, and I think when they came to us, it was more about the overuse of the washrooms and the amount of people when the bus tours stopped up there and the walking tours. So, I mean, if we could actually investigate if it's even possible for those functioning washrooms to be open to the public on a daily basis, it might save us, you know, some money in the long run. Because quite honestly, out of the three options, the only one that I see even being close to being discussed or feasible in the future would be the portable washroom option. And I think we'd have to sit down with both the Lunenburg Academy Foundation and the library to see if that's what they were looking at, because I'm not sure if that's the direction they were thinking. But again, I also think that, you know, the budget, we're already into this year's budget process. So unless we can come up with something that's very low maintenance or low expense, I can't see something happening for this season at this point. So maybe Councillor Strong's recommendation of waiting till after that study comes out, and then maybe the community will be applying for some funding for some more washrooms in needed spots once that report does come back. So personally, I'd like to see us defer this. And in the meantime, if staff could come back with the possibility of using the basement washroom, because that might be a quick fix for the short term, but that's my opinion. But Deputy Mayor?
I was just going to say, so to give staff appropriate direction, I put forth a motion that staff just investigate the opportunity to make more use of the washrooms in the basement, to possibly make them available to tenants and potentially for public use, and what that might look like, or yeah, how possible that might be.
There's a motion made. Does someone want to second that motion? Seconded by Councillor Greek. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Babineau.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily about the motion specifically, but one of the other issues with the washrooms was that the heritage classroom can only be open when the library is open, because they don't have their own standalone washrooms. So I guess when staff is, you know, looking into the basement washrooms further, if they could maybe take that into account, because I think it would be great if the heritage classroom wasn't limited in that way. So, but yeah, that was it.
Thank you. And that actually makes more sense, that the bathrooms possibly could be inside the building than having to go outside the heritage classroom and go outside to a porta potty. So no, great point. So there's a motion made and seconded. Any further question on the motion? Councillor Daphne.
Would this be something that we would bring Ellen Johnson in on if we're looking for accessibility? Or
We definitely could, but I think what we were thinking for the short term is the washrooms on the main floor are accessible. So we would have washrooms that are accessible, and then hopefully the more physically, more people that don't need accessible washrooms would be the ones that would use the basement washrooms. And this would be really a, you know, possibly it might turn into a long-term fix, but this is more of a short-term fix for the time being to get us through. But I understand where you're saying accessibility is very important, but every washroom in the building might not be accessible at this time. So we did discuss that a bit. So no, great question. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Opposed, motion carried unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Now we'll move on to 11.2, which is a report on reduction to speed limits on town streets. And Tyson, you're up again.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is another for information report for council. It follows up again on direction from the March 4th Committee of the Whole meeting, where the parking and traffic study was discussed. Council identified the speed of traffic within town as a concern. Although much of the data included in the study supported there is no significant speeding issue affecting the town relative to the posted speed limit, our understanding is that feedback council received from residents indicated there was at least a perception that traffic was travelling too fast for its surrounding environment. So just a preface, I did a lot of reading for this report and I've tried to capture it for council. So I did learn some things. So I'm going to go through them in some detail here. So you'll just need to bear with me. So the Nova Scotia Motor Vehicle Act defines the default speed limit of 50 kilometres per hour in residential zones. So this document regulates the minimum speed limit allowed to be posted on regular roadways and streets. So that's kind of our starting point here. In order to be able to post speed limits lower than 50 kilometres per hour, an application must be made to the Provincial Traffic Authority with the following details. So the functional classification of the street or road must be local. The current speed limit for the street road must be 50 kilometres per hour. A speed study must be completed, confirming that the 85th percentile speed is close to 40 kilometres per hour. So when we talk about 85th percentile speed, we're saying that 85% of drivers drive that speed or lower. And then there's also a requirement that reference is made to the Canadian guidelines for establishing residential speed limits. And that document contains an evaluation tool that helps you classify the road type, its function and physical characteristics to see what sort of speed limit's appropriate. So in other jurisdictions, the province has allowed speed limits to be lowered to 40 kilometres per hour where appropriate. Any lower than this limit is reserved for school zones and private property. So 40's the lowest the province would ever support. It's important that the speed limit be set at a level safe for road users, pedestrians, cyclists, everyone that uses the roads. But there also needs to be a balance with it being reasonable for motorists to follow, for it to be reasonable and effective. So going back to the criteria that we covered, the functional classifications. So one of the things to come from the traffic and parking study was street classifications in section 5.3 of the report. And that's figure 14 that's included in the staff report. So all the bright blue was classified as local. So looking in Old Town, the majority of that would be local roads. The exception would, under the current classification, would be Lincoln, King, Pelham, and then Dufferin and Falkland, which are trunk 3. So the majority of Old Town already fits that criteria. So the current speed limits within town, basically all the speed limits within town are 50, apart from some transition areas coming in to the entrances to town. So moving on to the 85th percentile speed study, which again is referring back to the parking and traffic study. There were 6 checkpoints analysed and the 85th percentile speeds measured. So most of those locations were focused around Old Town. As you can see in figure 3, that's part of the report. So locations C, D, E, and F were all in Old Town or towards the entrance of Old Town, I guess, with location C. So we can see from the data that it appears that locations C, D, E, and F all meet that criteria where the existing 85th percentile speed is around that 40 kilometers per hour. And just quoting from the report, so speed limits are higher on the outskirts, locations A and B, where speed limits are higher, but are manageable within Old Town Lunenburg based on the collected data. So moving on to the objective assessment based on Canadian guidelines. So one of the notes at the start of the document is road safety may be enhanced through credible posted speed limits that match the expectation of drivers for a given roadway and its surrounding areas. So with the evaluation tool, which is the last page of the report, items such as road geometry, lane width, roadside hazards, the amount of pedestrians and cyclists, the type of pavement, intersections are all scored and scaled. And this can be done for individual streets or neighborhoods in terms of making the application to the province. So staff haven't taken on, haven't performed this task as of yet, but it's likely something that would be required to be done for if changing the speed limit was something that council was interested in. I've just written some general considerations based on the information I've covered. So as we talked about, the traffic and parking study focused on a lot of speed data from Old Town. If council was interested in looking for opportunities to reduce speed limits in Newtown or Tannery Road or other areas, likely some further data would need to be taken to assess it against that 85th percentile scale. So the maximum permissible drop in a posted speed limit in a single step is 30 kilometers an hour. So at those entrances to town that we're talking about, we could only go from 80 to 50, and then normally you would go from 80 to 60 to 40 if you wanted to step down to 40. So it would be more than one single step. So speed limits should be consistent at any location on a two-way traffic flow road. So travel in each direction on the road should be the same. Just from others' experience, it is very unlikely that the province will agree to reduce speed limits along roadways that it shares with the town. So that would be trunk 3, which is Maple, Dufferin, Falkland and Victoria Road, and then Route 324, which is through the Lilydale four-way stop up the hill on Dufferin and then connects with Sandy Hollow. So those would be those areas. So the town's comprehensive community plan contains the following recommendation. Reduce speed limits to 30 kilometres an hour on Old Town streets without sidewalks to foster a shared street environment. So again, I think it would be difficult to get it to 30. I'm not sure where that recommendation came from in the CCP, but that was identified. So it also notes in the CCP that speed limits play only a partial role in actually slowing down vehicle. Drivers of vehicles tend to be more responsive to visual cues than posted speed limits. When drivers approach narrow streets surrounded by a higher degree of activity, they are more likely to slow down than on a wider road. With this just being a for information report, there's no financial aspects as of yet, but if council wanted to move ahead, a few of the things that were identified. So the additional speed data collection analysis for the areas not covered in the original traffic and parking study. I think there'd be an upper limit to that cost of $20,000. It could be less, but again, it depends on how many points we're looking at, if it's specific or it's more general. And then the removal of 50-kilometer-per-hour speed limits signs and replacement with new speed limit signs, and then potentially adding more signs as well, where it would transition from areas where we're 50 and then move into 40. Potentially, we're looking at $10,000 there. At the moment, we have approximately 30 speed limit signs within the town limits. Some of those are on those trunk 3 and highway 324 locations where we're probably wouldn't be permitted to change the speed limits, but just to give council an order of magnitude there. The report mentioned infrastructure changes as well, but we consider that to be outside of the scope of what council was looking for at this point. That would need more specific locations to be identified for proper analysis. So I appreciate everyone's attention. Lots of details there, but if there are any questions, happy to address.
Thank you, Tyson. Before we go on, we do have our RCMP staff sergeant here. Would you like to make any comments on the report at all? Because we'd have to have your, I think, sign off on some of this.
So I made myself available to Tyson. We discussed the report as you see before you. I'd like to bring everyone's attention to the areas of A and B, where we do have signs or indication of speeding in those two areas. To let you know that I've asked the staff of the Lilydale detachment to focus on those two areas. In the coming weeks, you are going to see LiDAR enforcement, that is laser enforcement, rather than the normal radar. It's difficulty to do radar on approach A as you see it because of the curve in the highway. We have to have a length of distance that it's straight, or you can't use the indication that comes on the radar. So what we've done is we have some LiDAR operators, and we're going to have them come here and operate the LiDAR. And virtually, when you point the LiDAR at an object, it gives you an automatic instant reading. So the curvature of the road is not going to be affected. So you're going to see that in the next couple of weeks here. There was some discussions with Tyson and I over the intersection at Highway 332 and the 3. That he may be able to go back to Department of Transportation and discuss with them going from a 2-way to a 4-way stop there. And virtually, my suggestion was that we then ask at the same time that they post a 50-kilometer sign immediately leaving the 4-way stop in front of Frank Shell. That all of a sudden anyone coming into town is automatically reduced to 50 kilometers an hour. And I think what we'll see is that automatic change at that intersection, then someone coming into town will automatically go from a 50-kilometer speed. And as they approach and coming into town, they're actually reducing their speed. So I'm hoping that would be a suggestion that could be explored further with DOT. Also at section B there, we're going to do some enforcement coming into town on that straight stretch and see if we can't get more compliance there. The change to a 40-kilometer speed sign within town, I would just raise the issue with everybody. We have compliance within town at 50 kilometers. We see that in the report. And to go to a 40-kilometer sign, I'm just concerned that we may set ourselves up for, all of a sudden, the expectation is 40. And when it's not complied with, because across the province of Nova Scotia, you can travel at 50 kilometers in an unmarked area, or in a normal town setup, would be 50 kilometers. And if we reduce it in the town of Lunenburg to 40, what percentage of the population is going to notice that and adhere to it? And then we get ourselves into a situation when, if we were to enforce it and issue tickets, would we have any success through the courts? Just from my own experience in the courts, generally judges will give some leeway when the speed is over the limit, a small portion. And if we're into a 40-kilometer, and the question is, everyone is used to the 50, and then all of a sudden we're not getting any success through the courts. So I would just raise those issues for your own considerations based on the study itself.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Tyson or Gord at this time? Deputy Mayor?
So I always have lots of questions. Sorry to everyone. Thank you. I'm delighted to hear that there'll be greater enforcement on those couple of problem areas, because they are perennially a problem area. So having some increase in enforcement, I think, will be very helpful, at least in the short term. It always seems to work for a little while at least. So that's very helpful, and I appreciate that. I'm always a little discouraged to hear things like you can't reduce below 40. The province doesn't want to do that, and that they won't even potentially enforce that speed limit, or they'll be kind of lenient with that, because really it's been my experience that our streets aren't terribly long, and there's not a great, Newtown may be a bit of an exception, but that's also one of the areas where we had more residents than I ever anticipated concerned about the speed in town. Was actually in Newtown, where we have those nice big stretches of road down Brook and Broad Streets. And there are a number of young families who live there, and there are no sidewalks as barrier from, road to yards. And it's a real concern. And 50 is fast in a residential area. It's not when you're on an open highway, or, a regular, I don't know what the series are, but, between communities, but within a town where, houses are close to the road, and there's lots of, human activity on those roads, and especially, and Old Town as well, to be going any speed, it is, it is plenty fast. And, they have 30-kilometer limits around schools for the same reason. They need you to be vigilant. There's high activity there with children, and our residential streets are no different. So to hear that that's, the bar they set, I find a bit unfortunate, but that's not a question, just a statement. And I guess that goes to, I did have, the question I had written is, why are they reluctant to reduce the speed on Maple and Dufferin? Because it's a shared public municipal responsibility, because those are very residential streets. And there are children who live on both of those streets, families with young children. And I know, coming from the highway, from once they get through that four-way stop, they're feeling that foot on the pedal at a certain speed coming through Blockhouse, and they just continue right up through and into town, right down through a Dufferin Street or Green Street. And, it's fast for a residential area. So you can't answer it. I guess it's a rhetorical question, why the province is reluctant, but unless you have some insight on that.
No, other than I will bring to your attention, school zones are very difficult infractions to put through the court. There's time of day. Are there children present? What distance are they from the roadway? There's all of these factors that then come into play in those areas. I think we all see that the 30 kilometer zone in the school zones is highly effective. I believe it is. I don't have any stats to support that, but based on my own observations of enforcement, so.
Thanks. I could go on, but
Comment. I have, I knew I'd heard something on the news, so excuse me for using my phone here, but on April 9th, the city of Halifax has actually had approval from the province for reducing speed in certain in neighborhoods of the Fairview area. And it relates to the same information that you were just presenting us with. People were exceeding the 50 kilometers, but it's more of a notice to them. I mean, it might be something that we want to be following going forward with this, and before we actually start spending money. I mean, somebody at Halifax must be able to help us understand why they would pick certain neighborhoods over others. But I agree. I have been on Pelham Street in areas where there's no sidewalk with cars zipping by, that you feel like you're the last thing on in their vision, right? Because they just really go quickly on certain streets. So I just want to point out that Halifax, without raising its budget, actually has implemented a lower speed limit in certain neighborhoods.
I'd just like to say that I would like to see us look at certain areas, but again, maybe some information from Halifax and some other things. But I would like to see us reduce our speed limit to 40 in certain areas. I think 40 is low enough, quite frankly, myself. I've drove around town at 30 in places, and 30. I almost don't have to hit the gas in my car. It almost idles to 30, right? So I think 40 would be something I'd be interested in looking at in certain areas. We all know we don't need another study done to tell us the areas that people are most concerned, because we all just campaigned heavily the last little while. So Linden Avenue seems to be a big concern of people. Some areas back at town, Creighton Street seems to be a concern for some people. The entryways into town, Maple Avenue is a big concern, but again, that would be one we'd have to talk to our, DOT over, because it is a shared road. But I mean, Maple Avenue is a narrow road that's bumpy. Cars could get knocked off stride because of the bumps, and there's a lot of young families on Maple Avenue. So again, that's an area I'd like to see us look at, but maybe we could get staff to go back and work with Gord and come back with some recommendations, some areas that you think it might be able to try. The other thing about Creighton Street, and I've looked at Creighton Street because of campaigning twice in 2 summers, and I've heard a lot of people complain at the door. 2 things I'd like to see us look at on Creighton Street is there are 2 streets leading into Creighton Street that actually extend past Creighton Street. It's Prince Street and Cornwallis Street. They both go beyond Creighton into the loop, and Cornwallis goes down to the apartments and that. And they both have stop signs on either side, but they don't have stop signs on Creighton. I think making those 2 intersections, myself personally, if you guys could take a look at them, make those 4-way stops, I think it does 2 things. It makes those 2 intersections much safer, because people are used to driving down Cornwallis or Prince with no stop signs, and all of a sudden at the very end, there's a stop sign. And the one on Prince especially, the house is almost on the street. So if you're going up Creighton, like towards the hill, there's no way the car at Prince can be seen at all. So every time I go there, and my sister lives in that neighborhood, I always slow down to almost a stop, because I get worried that someone's going to blow through that stop sign, and I'm either going to T-bone them or they're going to T-bone me, and I don't want either to happen. So I think those 2 areas would also slow the cars down on that street, because there'd be 2 4-way stops on that stretch. So obviously they have to come to a complete stop twice in about a 500-yard radius. So I personally had looked at the report and looked at that, and those are 2 suggestions that I like to see us look at. So to have staff go back and look at those areas, and look at maybe a couple areas that we all know and had complaints during campaigning of reducing maybe to 40, but I'd hate to see us reduce it any further, for one. But that's just my 2 cents worth, and I can't make a motion, but I thought I'd throw my 2 cents worth into the discussion. Are there any other comments, Councillor Babineau?
Yeah, through the chair. Actually, just on what you were just talking about, I also agree that there's other areas that weren't covered in the initial traffic study that I would have interest in lowering the speed limit in. But I think based on what Tyson had put in his report, we're actually required to do those studies because they have to meet the 85th percentile, do they not?
Through the chair, yes, that's one of the criteria that's been identified, understanding where that 85th percentile is, and it needs to be close to 40 to even meet the criteria to reduce the speed limit to 40.
If I could make a suggestion, those side streets up in Old Town that are presently two-way stops, to effectively change them over to a four-way stop, I don't think that you have to go back to DOT to make that change. Is that correct, Tyson?
Through the chair, I think that's something we could take into our own consideration. It's more with the speed limit changes that I think we need to engage with. That more relates back to the Motor Vehicle Act, where it's a provincial act and we have to engage with them. Stop signs and those kinds of things, I think as traffic authority, we can look at ourselves.
I think you can, because I think if I remember correctly, when I was in council 100 years ago, former police chief Brent Crowhurst, the late Brent Crowhurst, he changed all the yield signs in Newtown and Old Town going up through to stop signs. They were all yield signs when we were growing up. And I remember in the early 2000s, he changed them all to stop signs. And believe me, as much as people are complaining about speed right now, when he changed every yield sign in town to stop signs, it wasn't received really well by a lot of the locals, but I think it was obviously for the right reasons. But he came to a meeting. We had our own police force at the time, and it was done in the very early 2000s, and all it cost the town was we had to, our own staff, I think, replace the signs. We had to buy new signs and replace them. But we do need direction if we want to move any further from council on this. So someone, Councillor Strong.
I just also wanted to add, I think on your point, that when you change something like this, incidents of accidents happen. So we would really need to have a very strong communication plan in place if we did move forward on this.
No, I agree. And I was glad to see when I went to the mail today, for those of you that might not have went to the mail today, we've had our first mail out newsletter that we've been talking about now for many, many moons. So there is a newsletter in your mailbox to talk about some upcoming public meetings and budget meetings and some other things that we're doing. So again, we are listening and we are hearing you. And again, I want to thank staff for putting that together and getting it out into the mailboxes, because there's some meetings coming up that we're hoping to have some people attend and give us some input. So along with that, if something of this nature, if we would change some stops or some signs into four-way stops or reduce the speed in certain areas, I think we would have to really do a serious communications effort on that. Councillor Daphne.
So through the chair, I hear what you're saying, but I go back to something that my father told me a long, long time ago. Lunenburg's not like any other town. We're Lunenburg, we're unique. And just because other towns have a 50-kilometer speed limit doesn't mean Lunenburg needs to have that, because like I said, we're Lunenburg and we're unique. The other thing I want to draw your attention to is under the general considerations, the very last point, it says, when drivers, it's the very last point, the very last sentence. When drivers approach narrow streets surrounded by a higher degree of activity, they are more likely to slow down than on a wider road. To be honest, I'm not reassured by more likely. And I don't want to take the chance of having an accident or a death or whatever it may be on my conscience when I know I could have had a chance to say, definitely lower the speed on C, D, E, and F, and then follow what the mayor said for the other places in town.
Thank you. And I also love the idea that Gord has brought forward on the four-way stop at Frank Shell that we discussed that, the previous council discussed that at great length as well. I think we've seen too many bad accidents happen out in that intersection as cars are going a fairly good clip down that hill coming into town. So I think if we could work with DOT, change that to a four-way stop and ask them to change the speed limit to 50 as soon as you go past that four-way stop, I think that'll greatly help the speed of cars coming into town on, I call it Victoria Road. I guess they call it 332, but it would definitely help with the speed on that road because now you're going 80 or 70, and all of a sudden, whammo, it's 50 right before the pet store there. So again, if it's 50 all the way in, you have lots of time to. You're coming from a complete stop, so I think you'll abide by the 50. So I do like that suggestion. So I guess my thought was between C, D, E, and F, some comments that were made around the table, but myself and some others, and your comment, maybe we could have Tyson and Gord sit down and come back with a suggestion on what we could do and a cost, because we have to know what it's going to cost. Because we're going to have to put the streets that aren't 50 that we're changing to 40, we're obviously going to have to put posts up and speed limit signs. If not, nobody would know, right? So that's going to obviously be a cost because the standard speed limit's 50 in most towns. So unless we're doing blanket the town at 40, we'd have to put, sufficient signs on the streets that we are reducing to 40, I would think. Deputy Mayor?
So like to make a motion, I think, but first I'd like to get clarity from Tyson with regard to putting the application through to make a change to speed limit. I thought from the report that we've mentioned those C, D, E, and F, those particular ones met the percentile of speed that would need to be met to potentially be considered for a reduction in speed. Am I reading that correctly?
My understanding is that, yeah, that 85th percentile speed needs to be at 40 kilometers or around 40 kilometers per hour. So I think the report that this traffic and parking study that we've had provided to us would support that aspect for those locations.
So with that understanding, I would move that we put forth an application to reduce speeds at those roadways identified in the report as C, D, E, and F, or otherwise known, I think, as Falkland, Linden, Pelham, and Creighton streets. And assuming that there's not additional studies or costs incurred with going through that process.
There's a motion made. Could we add that to that motion at the same time, have Tyson and Gord come make the other recommendations as well with the four-way stop outside of town and do it all at one time? Or separate? Okay, separate, okay. There's a motion. Oh, go ahead, Tyson. Sorry about that.
Sorry to interject. I think the Falkland one is going to be tricky, just where Falkland is a provincial part of Trunk 3. So even though it's showing that traffic is traveling below 40 even currently. So, but I think that one will be challenging, and it may just not be very productive.
I would amend my motion then to that applications go forward for D, E, and F then?
Okay, it's been moved for, sorry, Kayla?
Apologies. Could you just repeat the motion? I don't think we captured the reduction to 40, which I think is your intent. Just for clarity, could you repeat your motion?
Okay, move that, I'm not sure who the application goes to, but that staff put together applications to reduce speeds from 50 to 40 kilometers an hour on Linden Avenue, Pelham Street, and Creighton Street as they appear to meet the criteria required by the province to do so.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding this logistically because it's going to, if we're just looking at those three locations, say you enter Linden, so you're going down to 40, you get to the end of Linden, are you back to 50 going down Montague, or like it, looking at it needs to me to understand it and be able to, it, in the areas that it was taken, it might need to be a bit more of a macro approach rather than a micro approach. Maybe these speeds can be looked to support an area rather than a specific point.
My thinking is when you turn right by the Baker House, because you have not only Linden Avenue, you have Lower Street. That's a big concern as well. That should be included in Linden. It should be Linden and Lower, in my opinion, because we got a lot of complaints about Lower. So if you do Linden, Lower in, and then do all of Montague to the yacht shop at 40, and then Pelham, you do the whole Pelham Street at 40, and Creighton Street, you do the whole Creighton Street at 40. To me, that's the only way it's going to be possible to enforce or do, but that's just my thing, or understand, to be honest, but that's my thinking. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Well, I was thinking full streets, not just sections of streets, but honestly, my rationale behind those streets is that we have the information required. So it's basically a bit of a pilot that we go through the process. If there's the thought that that we wouldn't have to incur further expense to do further studies, I would definitely be open to expanding the areas included for a speed reduction according to what would make sense from staff perspective. So if we, I guess I just was looking for the highest potential for success and to see how it works and to do a bit of a pilot. But I am open to the idea of a staff report on, a further staff report on how to carry this forward. And so I can try again at a motion if anybody wants to indulge me. To move that staff prepare a report on the reduction of speeds from 50 to 40 kilometers an hour within the town, based on their recommendation, knowing that current data supports reductions as indicated in the traffic study that we currently have completed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I also think just looking, apologies, I don't have it right here in front of me. So if we were looking at the C, D, and E, not Falkland.
No. We're looking at D, E, and F.
There we go. D, E, and F. So we've eliminated Falkland, but Tyson, do you feel like that gives you enough direction to then explore putting together more research into what it could look like to submit an application for those three areas?
Honestly, I feel like I understand where council is taking this, where the town hasn't got into this appeal to reduce speed limits, and I certainly haven't as town engineer. Maybe it's staff can explore with the province what else we would need to do, like what the information we have and that we can easily supplement without incurring more cost, significant more cost, what that could get us, and then it would allow us to report back to council what we would need to do to either get to us to certain points. Would that be useful?
Yes, that's basically exactly what the deputy mayor just said in her motion. Okay.
Totally understood it then, hey? It's good.
And I mean, my only point was if you're going 39 or 37 to 39 down Linden Avenue consistently, would the province not look at the sister street that's 10 feet away? And you're probably going to speed limit, the same, speed down Lower Street. So my only thing is those are the two entrances in, and we had a lot of complaints about Lower Street campaigning. So if we're going to look at this, maybe we could just throw Lower Street into the request. And if they say, no, you have to have a study, then maybe we leave Lower Street off it at that point and just do Linden. But for the request, I would ask for both at the same time, because I see Gord nodding his head too. I mean, that makes sense. If you're coming into town, either one of them streets, you're probably going to be going the same clip, I would think. Right? So if we have a motion on the table, we'll have a report coming back. There needs to be a seconder. Yes, there's someone willing to second it. Seconded by Councillor Strong. Any further discussion on the motion? Councillor Green.
Not to keep this party going too long, I'll keep it brief. No, I think it's just, the hope is, for me personally, is that once we get the first 3 recommendations forth, I'm hoping that it might give us the opportunity to expand upon this and hopefully be able to take a look at some of these similar streets, because, for example, just using the Linden west of Montague as the going example, I mean, it's similar. You're going down Linden, you have cars on both sides. You have, during tourist season, a lot of people walking through the street. Well, if you're going down Montague right till the other end, it's no different. Cars on both sides, and people walking down the streets, the crosswalks, and through the streets. So I'm hoping that this will give us the opportunity to look at things at a broader perspective, and hopefully maybe identify some other problem areas that we can make a bit safer.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Yes, there's Gord.
I think if you're going to the province, I think that the flavor may be accepted a lot more if you were to go in with the idea of, we've done a study, we've captured the main arteries within the town, and we're asking for the town to go to 40 kilometers as a whole. We have a study which supports that on a majority of the streets, we are compliant with the 85 percentile. And I'm just suggesting that you may get a better response back from the province to all of a sudden then not have one street 50, one street 40, and that type of situation. So your consideration through the chair.
Thank you. Great idea. So we can add that into the report that you're doing. Okay, that's added to the motion. Well, okay, great. Everybody all good? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed. And one thing I just like to add, and I can't make a motion, but I'd love to see Tyson and Gord go back and contact DOT on the other issue as well, because I really think the 4-way stop, even though it's outside of town, or the intersection that we'd like to make a 4-way stop, even though it's outside of town, it's usually family members or residents of our town that are involved in those tragic accidents that are there. So if we could actually go to the province or DOT and see about changing that into a 4-way stop. I don't know what you have to do that, but I think that it's something that the community would be happy with. The one just down to the left is a 4-way stop. So I think it would only make sense that the one on the other end of that, I call it the RCMP stretch, would be a 4-way stop myself. So I don't know if we need a motion for that, or is that something you can just look into, or need a motion?
In terms of if Gord felt comfortable that could be an RCMP matter, it wouldn't necessarily be council to direct the RCMP to do something. However, if you felt that was in your purview, you could.
We don't typically, through the RCMP, get involved in contacting the DOT and asking for particular intersections to be changed. So I would leave that to the town as part of your report, that consultation take place. And I think that there's lots of evidence to support the possibility of that change.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Did we not make a motion to write a letter to MODL about that intersection, or am I misremembering, or did that happen?
No, that is correct. That is the intersection where there currently is a motion to send a letter to MODL and the MLA to forge some sort of joint statement, or that would be the intent, that through the partnership of the district and the MLA, it would carry a bit more weight to the province.
We can just wait for that to be done then, right? Excellent. Okay, so we are done with 11.2, I think. Oh, no, Deputy Mayor?
And you guys thought I was going to miss this meeting. Almost did. I just about the stop signs. If council's interested in looking at that, I do think it's worth taking this opportunity to just investigate the possibility. And this could be separate report, presumably, to keep things, unless it felt it was appropriate to combine the research into it, but to look at the possibility of having more stop signs installed throughout town. We've identified a couple of spots that seem reasonable to us, particularly on Creighton Street at Prince and Cornwallis intersections. But there may be other areas of town where the installation of a stop sign would facilitate the reduction of speed or encourage a speed reduction and make sense from a traffic safety point of view.
So through the chair, separate to the parking and traffic study that was presented to council, Public Works looked at some intersections with a traffic engineering consultant last year. The ones that the mayor's mentioned, unfortunately, weren't part of it. But for instance, one of the ones that we looked at was the Pelham and King Street intersection, and another one was the Tannery Canickle one over by the school, like making that, looking at ways to make things functional. Some things there were recommendations from the traffic engineer that we took into consideration. So again, this is when the budget's presented to council. These are the kinds of things that when you see the downtown traffic improvements line in that budget, those are the kinds of smaller scale but large value improvements that we're looking at doing. So. But if there are other intersections, we can look at similar, perhaps the money in that, assuming that budget item goes ahead, then if we need some traffic engineering help, then it could fall under that item. And then if it's adding stop signs, then we're not into big capital costs either. So it's potentially that year or the following year, those kinds of projects can be executed, or council can find another way to execute them if that becomes a priority as well. So lots of options.
Well, the two that you mentioned, actually, when I look in my head at where those are, those make perfect sense. So I'm glad to hear you looked at those two intersections, because I was thinking of King and Pelham as well, because you can't really see when it's really busy to your right or left when you're pulling out of Pelham. So I think making that a four-way stop to me makes sense, because the one up from it is now a four-way stop on King and well, it's a three-way stop on King and Lincoln. Should be a four-way stop in the summer. But anyways, but I do like those ideas. But I would love to see maybe you take a look at the two intersections I mentioned on Creighton Street, because I really think they are an accident, I think, waiting to happen. But that's my personal thought. I don't know if we need direction from council on that, a motion, or Kayla?
Yeah, for absolute clarity, I think a motion is always good, so staff are clear on what to bring back. So it could be that direct staff to bring back a report exploring installing four-way stops at the two Creighton Street intersections.
Is someone prepared to make that motion? Because I can't. Deputy Mayor?
Need to repeat it, or are we good? Okay.
Moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Babineau. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Great. I think we're now finished with 11.2. So again, Gord, thank you very much. You got our money's worth tonight. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Yeah. Thank you. 11.3 is for information only, but just a little update. There is a report in there with dates. So for those of you that went online and saw the report, there are 3 dates that are mentioned there that are set right now. So Marvin, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so the 3 dates that are listed are April the 29th, and we'll be looking at both capital and operating budgets. And it'll be an agenda item for the regular meeting. And at all 3 of these sessions, there will be a special public input session as part of all 3 of these. So it's an opportunity for public input. And May the 13th is the second, which is like version 2 after changes are made from the April 29th input. And then we'll be back on May the 27th with version 3 and potential approval of council at that time. So.
Thank you very much. I also want to take this time to thank all our staff over the last couple of weeks for putting this document together. It'll be released to the public probably sometime late next week for the meeting the following week for you to all to review. So again, thank you. I know they've been working diligently over the weekends and evenings to put this document together. So, and really, we're having 3 separate meetings that are public input sessions. So again, like the old saying goes, those are your 3 opportunities to come. And once you review the budget, if you have complaints, comments, or suggestions, we want to hear you at those meetings, right? Those are your time. That's your time to come speak. We want to hear from you. We encourage it. Because if you don't, and on May 27th, when the budget passes, then you'll have to wait until next April before you can come to us again and complain about the budget, really, because we were giving you ample opportunity to give your 2 cents worth in the process, because we really think that it's important for the citizens to give their input during this process. The budget is the most important piece of material that this council and the community will do annually. It's what basically makes the town function every year. So again, staff, thank you. Council, when you get the budget document, I've went through a lot of them. It's going to be some great reading for you for lots of nights. But again, come prepared, and I suggest the citizens of this community to come with your questions and your comments, because we want to hear from you. So again, thank you very much to staff. Thank you, Marvin, Tyson, Kayla, and the rest of the staff that aren't here tonight. We're spending lots of countless hours putting this document together. So moving on to 12.1, there's a draft motion in front of us. Councillor Strong.
I've given this motion some consideration since I last talked about it as a notice, and would like to read this motion as follows. That council directs staff to review and report back to council on the UNESCO World Heritage context for development within the Old Town Buffer Zone, specifically addressing the development expectations outlined in the original 1994 nomination documents submitted by the province and the town of Lunenburg and supported by Parks Canada. And that this review include consideration of how the 1994 application has informed the town's interpretation of appropriate development within the zone. And that this review include the recommendations from ZAP and its the consultants who were working on that project. And that following receipt of the staff report, council reconsider its November 28th, 2023 motion, which stated, moved and seconded that council declare the lands of Upper King Street, including PID 600574660, PID 600573995, PID 6005737, PID 6005739, Upper Duke Street, north of Creighton Street, Upper King Street, north of Creighton Street, with the exception of the first 42.5 beginning at Creighton Street heading north, as shown on attachment F as surplus lands. And if council is inclined, that we do a site visit at that time before we make the vote on the reconsideration.
So it's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Daphne. Any further question or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried unanimous. Now I'll go on to the right and just go this way because we're into that part of the meeting. Councillor Daphne, do you have anything tonight?
Of course I do. Kind of a heavy subject. Last week, my employer sent myself and a colleague to a 2-day mental health first aid training at Construction Safety, Nova Scotia. It was only basic mental health first aid, but the facilitator gave us the tools or catchwords to speak with, not at, anyone who may be having a mental health issue. And as we all know, mental health issues are sadly on the rise. Key points to remember when speaking with someone that you feel or have noticed the signs that may be having a mental health issue is when you speak to them or speak with them, it's a soft, even, controlled voice. You want to stay calm. You want to stay even keel. Another thing to remember is the crisis is theirs, not yours. The focus is always on them. So try to stay away from, I know how you're feeling. Each crisis for each person is unique to that person. Always give the person options that you know if they pick any of those options, that they are doable and that they are agreeable and that they are safe options for them to pick. Something that I did learn was our suicide rate in Nova Scotia is comparable to all of Canada. And while that may sound good, it truly isn't, and it's on the rise. Women try to commit suicide more than men. However, men succeed more than women do. Men go for the more violent act, I'll say. I've left on the table over there as you come in a handout for the helpline. I just want to say that the second day of the training was a very heavy day. We focused on schizophrenia, psychosis, and suicide. And I think the suicide chat was probably the most intense session I've ever had. It was only, it was only about 40 minutes long. A couple people shared their experiences. And I will just say that you truly, truly don't know what's going on in someone's head. You truly don't. They could be calm, they could be frantic. You just don't know. So treat everybody with kindness. That's all I can say. Just treat everybody with kindness.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
I just wanted to do a shout out to all of our young local musicians. The Lunenburg County Music Festival is going on right now. Some events have already taken place and there are others still upcoming. I don't have, couldn't pull up the schedule quick enough to share it here, but I know it's online and available and would encourage people to support our young musicians whenever they can. And just mention that I know the final concert is on May 2nd at Central United and encourage people to go and support all of our budding musicians.
Thank you. I know the Lunenburg County Music Festival certainly helped, form the person that my daughter's grown into be. She was very involved in that over the years, and it certainly helped her growth to become the adult she is. So it's a great venue and great thing. So if you have time, go listen to the young artists because they really are phenomenal. Councillor Greek.
Nothing to add for tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Babineau. Well, thank you. And the only thing I'd like to add is I'd like to thank all my colleagues for everything they've been doing the last 2 to 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks, I guess, since we met because of the sudden snowstorm last Tuesday. But again, we've all been very busy over the last 3 weeks. And again, a shout out to the Lunenburg and District Fire Department AGM on Saturday night, where the whole complement of council with some of the partners were there. And again, the fire department certainly made note of the fact that everybody on this team actually were present, and we participated. And it was a lovely evening, and the residents of this community and surrounding area are only so fortunate to have a group of dedicated volunteers like we do. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'd put that team up against any team in the province, volunteer or paid. They're very highly trained and they're committed and they're great at what they do. And we're very fortunate we have them as volunteers. So again, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. It's very busy. Your schedules are very, very busy. So to take 4 hours out of a Saturday evening is really, you know, a dedication that we've been given. That's what we've put our name on a ballot for. So thank you. So nothing else at this time. Motion to move into closed session. Moved by Councillor Strong, seconded by Councillor Babineau. Okay, we're going to take about a 5-minute recess. Thank you.